Foods is pleased to sponsor this solution panel session. We're a family-owned business that's been in existence since 1882, and we operate 44 baked goods operations throughout North America under the banners of Weston Bakeries, Ace Bakery, Maplehurst Bakeries, and Interbake Foods. Our established corporate sustainability efforts have long understood the value of waste reduction. While we're fortunate to have a readily available outlet for our bakery waste, we are still actively pursuing opportunities to reduce that waste because we understand that there is a layered opportunity there in terms of reduced intensity costs around utilities and labor. We're also looking outside of our four walls, as consumer insights and innovation are now core elements of how we do business today. An example of this will be seen in our Ace Bakery business unit, where a new brand, River Road Bakehouse, is being introduced. This brand's promise is an artisan bread taste guarantee. This brand's purpose is to fight food waste, and a portion of the proceeds from the sale of this brand will go to just that, fighting food waste. We will be providing a financial grant to the University of Guelph for research. We're going to be supporting local charities across North America, charities that are committed to fighting food waste, such as Second Harvest. And finally, we'll be leveraging social media to educate consumers on food waste and empower them to take action. Participation through social media will allow a consumer to direct per participation 25 cents to a charity of their choice from a list of charities that are fighting food waste. I believe that if you go to the Ivy booth in the Solutions Showcase area, you'll be able to pick up a coupon for our new River Road Bakehouse product. The importance of food waste is getting traction, and most recently we've been contacted by the University of Manitoba, who's looking for some product because they're launching a bit of research on how to repurpose stale product into other useful food products. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our panel, all of whom are doing some amazing work on food waste. First, to my far left, your right, is the panel leader, Cher Meerweather, Executive Director, Provision Coalition. Cher is one of Canada's leaders in food manufacturing sustainability. As Executive Director of Provision Coalition, an organization she founded with the country's top food and beverage professional associations, Cher works directly with manufacturers to transform their business culture and operations. An advocate for change and a passionate spokesperson, Cher has dedicated her career to advancing sustainability concepts within the Canadian food industry and sustainability solutions at the firm level. Most recently, Cher has sharpened Provision's focus on the reduction of food loss and waste, developing innovative technologies and online tools that will modernize facility processing. Next to Cher is John Lillard, and John is the R&D project leader, innovation team at Campbell Company of Canada. He takes pride in creating products that are not only healthy for consumers, but also healthy for the planet. He has his undergraduate degree in food science and human nutrition and a master's in food science, as well as his culinary degree. Some ideas for use of food waste for recipes, please. John is actively working on food waste initiatives at Campbell's with the support and assistance of their global corporate social responsibility team, Provision Coalition, and Enviro Stewards. Enviro has a booth in the Solution Center as well. John is also a member of Provision Coalition's Food Waste Working Group, which is comprised of industry, government, and academia leaders focused on identifying opportunities and solutions to reduce and divert food waste from entering landfills. Along with his wife, Marcy Lillard, he's also owner-operator of Mindful Grocer, an online education portal and retail site devoted to food waste reduction and sustainable living. And last but not least, because I've heard Doug speak before and he's a very great speaker, Doug is the Director of Engineering at Ippolito Fruit and Produce. He's part of the leadership team there. Ippolito is a multi-unit business with 3 large modern food processing facilities in Burlington, as well as operations at the Ontario Food Terminal, California, and an extensive transportation business. Doug's experience running food processing operations spans 30 years of meat, bakery, condiments, pasta, sauces, and vegetable processing. Doug is also chair of the Agri-Food Management Institute, as well as on the board of directors of the Agricultural Adaptation Council as the agribusiness food processor sector rep, and is the vice chair, food starter of the Toronto Food Business Incubator. Doug is also on the Agricultural Adaptation Council Food Processing Industry Roundtable Executive Steering Committee, and he has diplomas in food science as well as industrial engineering technology. So I'll turn it over to Cher and welcome the panel.
Thank you, Walter. What I want to do this afternoon is give you a live demo of the Food Loss and Waste Toolkit that Provision built, and we'll showcase some of the food companies that have been using that toolkit. We're super excited about this. It was only launched in October, so we've got some cool stuff to share. I'll focus in on Byblos Bakery and Calgary Italian Bakery. Unfortunately, they weren't able to be here today, but they did give me permission to share their results. And then I'll talk about some of the next steps, where we want to go next with that toolkit. And then I'm going to pass it over to John, and he'll share some of his experiences. Doug will tell their story. And then we'll have an opportunity to chat with the group and see where we go in the next hour. At the beginning of the day, I talked about our Food Loss and Waste Stakeholder Collaborative. And this group, these 32 organizations, have been instrumental in much of our work in this space. Within that group, we decided to create create a manufacturer's working group to try and understand what is it that the manufacturer needs. Remember, our purpose is on the manufacturing side. And that group said we need a tool to help us identify what the cost is to food manufacturers from food loss and waste. And so that was sort of the impetus for how we were going to create the tool. We wanted to be able to increase profitability and competitiveness. And we also wanted to be able to reduce environmental footprints and business risks with this tool. The tool is housed within our sustainability management system. And we are unbelievably proud of this tool. It is getting global recognition. In November of last year, I was fortunate enough to be invited to present the tool to the World Bank. In March, I presented it again at the Commission for Environmental Cooperation. And just last month, the UN North American Environment Research Office asked us for access to the tool so they could explore it to determine how they can help advocate the tool and get it out there to the manufacturers. So, as I said, we're super excited. What I want to show you is a live demonstration of what the tool can do, and then I'll share with you some of those case studies. So, as I mentioned, it was launched just in October, and so we are still very much in that piloting stage where we're testing, ironing out the bugs, but this is sort of that live demo. So the tool itself was built by 3 collaborative partners, 2CG, Dylan Consulting, and Enviro Stewards, and they worked with us to create the actual tool. The tool functions in 3 different ways. What it allows you to do is interact with the tool depending on the type of information and data that you have. So method 1, if all you have is your bills, you can engage the system. So your waste disposal bills, that's method 1. Method 2, if you've done a traditional waste audit in your facility, you can engage in the system and you can start to get at some of the root causes for where your waste is occurring and some of the potential solutions. Method 3 is a method in which you actually conduct a food loss and waste audit in collaboration with the tool itself and really get into the heart of what's happening in that facility. I'm going to briefly show you method 1 and method 3 today. So once you're live and in the system, I'm already logged in. You would choose your facility. I'm going to show you the bakery facility because it has pre-populated data in it. And I'm going to, again, start with method 1. Bring that up so you can see. So it starts to ask you some very simple questions. How many tons of waste was diverted to landfill? What was the cost of the landfill during the period of time? What percentage of waste was directed to the landfill? Is food waste? How many tons? Et cetera, et cetera. What was the cost of diversion? To give you a sense of how much total waste or food waste is happening and what's the annual cost. It does ask you how many days your facility is operating and what's the average value of your finished product. Once you've inputted all of the data into the system, it does give you a little report in terms of giving you some data and perspective of what's happening in that facility. So annual quantity of food waste, the estimated percentage of avoidable, your disposal cost, your diversion cost, and then your value of food waste lost. So in my simple example, $52,000 per year. And it gives you a bit of a picture to get a sense. And again, this is just using your bills on your waste disposal. What I really want to focus on is showing you the detail that the system can do when you do a real food loss and waste audit in your system. So in this case, I'm going to go in using method 3. So in method 3, we get into some much deeper information. You still have to input all of that sort of basic information, how many tons of waste directed to landfill, the cost of landfilling, et cetera, et cetera. Once we get past sort of that initial stage, we start to get into the heart of what the tool can do. You tell the system what are the major operating lines in your facility, so those top 5 operating lines. And then you tell the system what's the estimate the percentage of cumulative processing that's happening within that line. How many days of food waste did you include in your food waste audit? What's the weight of that avoidable food waste? And what was the weight of the unavoidable food waste? So you see that we're starting to get some precision in our calculations. Still asking you the same sort of questions about the days that you're operating and the value of that finished product. And the tool does assume that 50% is, when we calculate the food waste, we look at 50% of the retail value. So once you've inputted that into the system, it does give you a summary report so that you can start to see, make sure that your information is correct and that you're comfortable what you've inputted into the system. So you get a summary of your process lines and all of that information, as well as some graphics to give you a sense of what's happening. Then my favorite part, where the magic happens, if you will, is where we start to get into the root cause. So for every one of those processing lines, you start to ask yourself the 5 whys. Why did food waste occur in this line? Why did answer 1 happen? Why did answer 2 happen? And you go through that. There's a nice little drop down to help get the brainstorming, the juices flowing, if you will. And then there's a pictorial about the typical root causes of food waste. Once you've answered all of those questions for each of your processing lines, then you can start getting into some of the solutions. It does give you another root cause summary report, so you can verify that your information is correct. But when you start to move into some of the solutions, so at each process line, you can start to say, what are some of the solutions that I can tackle this particular problem? What's the estimated capital? What's the operating annual budget? What are the potential benefits that I can sell this particular solution? What are the potential challenges to this solution? How long will it take me to implement it? What's the level of importance? And you go through each one of your solutions and you start to rank them. Then again, it gives you that summary of your solutions reports, and you have the ability to toggle. So I want to see all of my high priorities. Now I want to see my capital options. I want to see actually my low capital and see how many of those are high. You can toggle back and forth so that you can see your priorities. In essence, that is the core of the tool. There are a number of different support functions to help you as you move into your implementation plan, and then also with your monitoring plan. There's some suggestions to help guide you as you execute those solutions. And I'm going to talk about at the end some of the next iterations of the tool, but that is in essence what the tool does. What I want to share with you now is the success that some of the food companies are having using that toolkit. We've been piloting the tool with 7 food companies. Marzan Foods, who is in the room, Campbell's, who we have on the table, or sitting at the, you're on the table, sitting on the chairs, Saputo, Calgary Italian Bakery, Byblos Bakery, Earthfresh, and Ippolito. And as I mentioned, I want to chat about Byblos Bakery and Calgary Italian Bakery because they're willing to share those great results. So first, those 2 particular pilots couldn't have happened without the support of the Alberta government. So we worked in partnership with them to do these pilots. In this case, we did work with Enviro Stewards to do an on-site food loss and waste assessment. It's not required to do that assessment to use our tool, but while we were piloting the tool, we wanted to make sure that the tool was working it correctly, so it was sort of a critical piece for us. The case studies are complete. We're just waiting for those approvals. You should see them at the end of April, early May. So Byblos Bakery, they started their business in 1975. They're located in Calgary, Alberta. They produce high-quality pitas, naans, bagels, and tortilla wraps. And what is great about them is they're Western Canada's #1 branded pita maker. When we used the Food Loss and Waste Toolkit, coupled with that assessment from Enviro Stewards, we identified 9 opportunities. The cost of those 9 opportunities was estimated at $725,000 annually. Yes, wow, to that company. And so when we put that into perspective, it was 63,000 kilograms of food waste, and 29% of that total waste can be reduced. And so, from my perspective, when I was seeing these kinds of results, I was like, our little tool is doing that, with this assessment. This is fantastic. So the largest source that was identified was expired retail product returns. 42% of the waste, it equated to 84,000 kilograms, valued at $500,000 annually. Some of the specific opportunities that were identified when they started to look at their solutions: improve retail inventory management, sell the product at a reduced rate near the end of the shelf life, and we heard Christine from Walmart talking about that. The next largest sources: seeds at 16%, dough at 15%, bagels at 13%. And I'm going to touch on each one of those. Some of the opportunities in the seed side: reducing the length of the seed hopper and adding a second reclaim chute. That would reduce 30,000 kilograms of seed loss, valued at $80,000 per year in savings. Some of the sources of bagel waste: inappropriate size and shape of the finished product. And you can see in the picture, those are supposed to be those perfect bagels. A bit of a miss on that one. Some of the other sources: line jams, representing about 30% of the waste, and inconsistent proofing at 28% of the waste. Opportunities: increase the conveyor capacity. That reduces losses by 8,000, has the potential to reduce losses by 8,000 kilograms, valued at $27,000 per year. Process improvements in mixing and proofing, and I'm going to read you a definition because I'm not a food manufacturer. Proofing is the process of allowing the dough to rise by a predetermined amount based on the quantity of yeast and ingredients in the recipe. So that's proofing for those of you who are not manufacturers. And in this case, the opportunity would reduce the bagel losses by 7,500 kilograms, valued at $25,000 per year savings, with an immediate payback. So this case study, as I said, it should be released at the end of the month. But overall, in addition to all these great food loss and waste opportunities, we also identified $207,000 in resource savings, with an aggregate payback of 0.3 years. And I love this quote. This is from Joe Swinston, who's the general manager. And he says, it's a fairly simple equation for business that when you streamline operations, you improve profitability. This project did exactly that by exploring food loss and waste in our operation and the related utility consumption. The second case study is the Calgary Italian Bakery. And they were founded in 1962. The company continues today as a family-owned and operated business serving Western Canada. They're one of the largest independent bakeries. They're dedicated to a full complement of bakery products: English muffins, bread, buns, pastries for retail, broader public sector, and restaurants. When we did our food loss and waste toolkit and our assessment, in this case we found 10 opportunities, 6 of which we were able to quantify. Again, this case study was done in partnership with Enviro Stewards. In this one, we found $126,000 worth of savings potential, 265,000 kilograms of food wasted per year. And the bulk of that was coming out of the bread line at 49% and the English muffin line at 36%. The sources of waste that we found, investigating the crushed product waste occurring at the slicer and the bagger. This was where 55% of the bread waste was originating, and that has the potential to reduce food waste by 50,000 kilograms, and that was valued at $63,000 per year for the company. Other opportunities, improving the breadline dough transfer. This is where 20% of the total facility waste is originating, 35 to 50% of the bread dough waste. It has the potential for 25,000 kilograms of reduced waste, $19,000 per year savings. Other sources of waste, 50% of the English muffin waste is characterized as deformed, undersized, and misshaped, as I've shown in the picture. And this, again, is where 35% of the facility waste is originating. In this case, some of the opportunities, process modification and an equipment upgrade to improve their product consistency. And again, 35% of the facility waste is originating here, 25,000 kilograms, 31,000 savings per year. If I didn't say it, they also really wanted to focus in on employee training because there was a behavior aspect as well. Burned muffins account for 20% of the waste in this category. They still haven't been able to figure out why this is happening, but we know that it's equating to about 8,000 kilograms of waste. And if we can sort it out, that has the potential for $10,000 worth of savings. So again, this case study, in addition to those great food loss and waste opportunities, $191,000 in resource savings with a 0.6-year payback. And a quote from Lewis, who's the VP of Sales and Administration. I deliberately avoided his last name. This project has provided us with valuable insight on how to improve our operations. We understand now that with relatively simple process changes and upgrades, we can find significant production savings for the company and the environment. So where do we want to go from here? It's really important for us that the toolkit continuously evolves as we learn more. So first, we want to make sure that we are aligned to the food loss and waste protocol. Kai talked about some of those connections that we're already making. We want to be able to give that user a summary report download so that they obviously continue to come back to the system, but that they can share it with their leadership to create those business cases. This was a bit of a miss, I will say, that when we put the system together, we said, you know, let's put 5 process lines. That'll be plenty. And then we engaged Campbell's and went, 5? That's it? So it was a bit of a learning for us that there are more than 5 major process lines. So we're going to make sure that we fix that in the next iteration of the tool, where it is basically you define the number of operating lines. We're also going to include the return on investment calculations. And again, a self-proclaimed miss. I am an environmental economist, and I forgot to put the ROI in the tool. We'll get there. And then we always knew we needed to do energy, water, and carbon calculations. The tool is very complicated. There's a lot of calculations in the back end. We deliberately separated that out, but we're ready now to make version 2.0 include that. So not only will you get the dollar value to your business, but you'll get a sense of this is the environmental savings, this is the energy savings, this is the emissions savings, so that you can start to tell your story and we can start to connect outcomes. Another idea that we have, which is a bit of a stretch, I will admit, is we want to put live data loggers in the facilities. So literally right in that bin, calculating how much waste is going in and live streaming that into the tool to sort of get past that manual data entry piece. So we're still in testing. We'll see whether or not that works. And I would encourage you, again, if you haven't had a chance, to go check out the toolkit in the solution showcase at the end of the day if you're interested, or come and talk to me if you want to learn more. So I'm going to pass it now to John to give us his experience from Campbell's Company of Canada.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm going to take this.
Amazing to be here. Met so many great connections already. Very excited to take that back to the business and see what we can do next and build on these opportunities. So why do I care? Well, you heard that I have a clinical nutrition background, food science background, culinary, and I'll steal from Andrew, who said it best this morning, for the love of food. And I think unfortunately we're getting further and further disconnected from food, and I don't know how many people, maybe a show of hands, who has a garden at their house or in their home that actually is, so you know what it takes to actually get it from a seed or a little plant all the way to something you're going to consume later. It takes a lot of work. So there's so much resources involved with that. So I think that's so important to continually bring that up. I don't know if you guys know it, but it is actually an anniversary this year, a 100-year anniversary of food waste messaging. Back in 1917, during World War I think maybe this might have been the first food waste communication. Buy it with thought, cook it with care, use less wheat and meat, buy local, serve just enough, use what is left, don't waste it. So I think actually we're picking up enough steam now, and hopefully we'll get it right this time 100 years later. But yeah, so it is going on. So what is our problem at Campbell's? So once again, like Unilever talked about, we're a global food company. So there, that causes a lot of issues. So there's regulatory in all those places. Once again, in each one of those countries, so we're in 6 different countries, we have plants, and we're selling in over 100 plus countries. Edible, inedible is different in each one of those places. Regulations different in each one of those places. So we got to manage that throughout our system. We also have brands covering everything, from baby food to soup and simple meals, beverage, you name it, we're dealing with it. So there's a lot of complications with that. On top of that, but I think everybody in here that has a business, we established this purpose. So Campbell's purpose is real food that matters for life's moments. They have pillars associated with that. I think 2 that are super important to food waste are real food has roots, so that means we try and be as sustainable as possible with all of our operations and all the way we handle food, from farm to fork, or to spoon, rather, for soup. And then transparency builds trust, and that's going to be huge, and that's allowing us to come together in this opportunity and be as open as possible and figure out solutions. And, often with big companies, you get risk averse of communicating things in fear that it'll be, shared with the media, and there's going to be issues, but we've got to get beyond that, and that's the only way we're going to come together and get to the solutions. What's happening locally? So there's a few issues with food waste at our plant. Number one, we're an old building, so we've got a lot of antiquated equipment, so we're constantly dealing with that. So it's difficult to build that business case for, these low-hanging fruit food waste that we're creating when we've got machines that we've got to constantly be keeping up and doing that. So how do we build a business case for that? Next, if you look at the volume that we're putting through our facility here, we produce all of the soup and a little bit of beverage that's still in cans. So all the canned and aseptic box product for Canada as well as some for the U.S. And when you look at how much we're actually producing, it equates to 600 million cans of soup. So that's a lot of volume coming through. On top of that, you've got 150 different SKUs that we're producing out of there. So that's a lot to count, a lot of complexity on a few short blending, filling, and packaging lines. So there's a lot of waste that's created along that spectrum. But some great things we do have in place, and historically, soup, you're able to take ugly produce and turn it into beautiful soup, which is a great thing. And on top of that, we're about, and local is a big thing now, and as we saw from 1917, that's still, important. We're about 3 hours away from 3/4 of fresh ingredients that we use, and we're constantly trying to improve upon that. So those are all extremely beneficial. But, as we're hearing it, education, engagement, and empowerment is incredibly important, and I'm constantly trying to push that. I do my research, and I try and figure out, and I'm constantly empowered by that, and I think R&D is a great position to be in to be able to communicate, because I'm able to talk to sales and marketing, but also able to go out in the plant and talk with those guys, and I am able to create that bridge, and I'm constantly trying to empower other developers to create that bridge as well. When they're out there and walking through and they see, 100 kilograms or, 800 kilograms of beef or chicken that we've imported from Argentina in a tote, is that a one-time issue, or is this a chronic issue is happening, and feel empowered to ask operations what's going on, why is this happening, or do your own research and figure out why it's going on and bring a solution up. But we also got to put in place some kind of incentives, so the plant employees, when they're sitting in their forklift and watching the stuff falling on the ground, they feel empowered to go talk to somebody and bring it up. And then, maybe just even a small food voucher or something like that to start, and then build off of that. Maybe they get a percentage of whatever gets implemented. Simple little things like that. So they actually care that this waste is being produced. And then the education component, why does it make a difference? We all know the stats that, so much is being lost. A third, and the resources that are associated with that. We've got to educate the employees on that. We kicked off a audit plant-wide, and this toolkit extremely helpfully with that, because that kicked operations into overdrive, into implementing that. And that kicked off on Monday, and I presented them real quickly just to kind of give them a taste, what is food waste, why does it matter? And so many of the operators, maybe they've seen something on CBC or something like that, but they don't know about it. Education is still a huge component of it. They're not doing the research we are, so we need to take them along on the journey as well. So I'm excited, hopefully, to talk to Andrew and figure out, how do we get some learnings in place and some good tutorials in place to help out the plant and staff and everyone. It's sales, marketing, everyone needs to embrace the knowledge. So quantify to qualify, we keep hearing you can't manage what you don't measure, and it's extremely important. And we see that through the toolkit. It really kicked things off and got us out in the plant and questioning the operators. They're on the front lines, really, and they see things every day, and then they're excited to talk about it and somebody actually doing something about it, and then actually get in there and measure. And that's something they can do every day, is actually go out, and it doesn't take that much for a tote that's coming off for her to take the tote over and measure real quick and see what's going on, and we're going to start to implement that and do that. And then that really builds a business case. It's so tough when you've got all these, and we talk about it, you've got the operating budget as well as your capital budget, and that's kind of laid in place. But the great thing is we also have this thing called enabler opportunities that R&D and procurement is tasked with. So we can trickle in this low-hanging fruit that often gets forgotten because it can't be built into a capital project, and then we can attack it, and then now you build in a beautiful component of a triple bottom line, and you show that, okay, it's not just the economic value that we're bringing, but it's also a social and environmental component to it, which is vital. So, the toolkit, it's phenomenal. It's been great, and it's not just the toolkit alone, but it's also the portal, and it's starting to ask those, it's got all those great questions and drop-downs in place that you can walk the business through. On the portal side itself, on just talking about sustainability, for having that conversation, and then you get the deeper dive into the toolkit, and then Cher's already walked you through that, so you can see that, and hop on, and as members of the food and beverage community, it's free to all of us, so hop on and start playing with it, and check it out, and and get people involved to start asking those questions. I've got a picture of Dave Fox, who's in the back of the room there. He's was a vital component. He was out there numerous times with me measuring and getting his hands dirty, as you see, digging into carrots and seeing what's being lost. And so what we found through this, and it seems like 700,000 is a magic number. I think it's the, as we've heard earlier, tip of the iceberg. Also, we've identified 700,000 worth of opportunity. But I think there's a ton more. There's no question there. But this provides that impetus now for us to actually delve deeper and do that work. And right off the bat, we had, I think, what was it, 60, 70%, and Dave can help me with that it's collateral loss that if you don't, and it's one of those things, if you don't see it, then, okay, well, maybe it's not happening. And it was just coming out of our optical sorter and going down the drain and being washed away, so nobody was actually collecting it. When we started collecting it in the red totes, we, measured it, started actually doing a dive into it and seeing how much of it is actually good carrot that's being wasted. And that was about 60, 70% is good carrot that we're just losing. And that equates to 800 tons, which I think is like 700,000 kilograms of good carrot that we're wasting. So it's just, that's just, it's, I hate to use negligence or something like that, but, it is. I mean, that's just us not actually taking the time to measure. Is it adjustments to the optical sorter that we need to put in place to fully identify it, or do we need a whole new system in place? And I'm talking P&P Optica, maybe there's opportunity there. So a lot of opportunity there. And also I talked about our meat. We've got meat falling off the line, and simple things maybe we could reintroduce, or it's something we adjust in our actual pocket delivery that could, minimize that loss. But I want the guys on the floor empowered to actually bring that up. They're seeing this happen. And I want our developers, when they see it, when they're out and doing runs and doing what we call special batches, which are test batches going out there, or even just doing assessments. And we put a continuous audit system in place and have measurements, although it's adding something else to the equation. But as we see, there's a huge economic value and there's a huge environmental and social component to it, because this is good food that's not getting into mouths, and that's a shame. So we've been working for a few years with Kai, and she's been working with our counterpart Melissa Donnelly in the U.S., and it's great. They've got, we're kicking off, and I'm so excited to hear we've got a case study in place to really put their food loss and waste protocol into action and start really getting some, visibility on what that means and how important reporting is. And we've got this big, hairy, audacious goal in place of 50% reduction by 2025. So actually getting involved and with Food Reduction Alliance and well as WRI, and really working with them and best practices and all of you guys together to improve upon our processes. And for me, it's not just measuring imported. Like I said, circular thought and circular design is so important. And being a product developer, I love that because I can really influence from the ingredients I choose to the processes I put in place to manufacture that product to what I figure out what to do if there is any waste left. And let's get away once again from lexicon of waste into what I love and I've heard called sparks, so which is scraps spelled backwards. It's just one of those great things. We got to talk about it as a resource as opposed to waste. So there's a huge opportunity there. Finally, looking at that food waste hierarchy, source reduction number 1, working with Provision and all of you guys, we can help define that reduction efforts. I've seen, I think David Donaldson had it up on his with the Just Peachy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but so that was a program that the U.S. did. They had farmers coming to them. They had blemished and peaches that were going to waste. They said, can you guys do anything with it? They partnered with packaging, with different ingredient suppliers, created a salsa using those peaches that potentially would go to waste, and then they were able to take that, sell it, and all the proceeds went back to the food bank. So it was a great collaborative effort that really benefited a lot of people. And also locally, we're 3 doors down from the Daily Bread Food Bank. We've had a long history of working with them to not only give finished product, but also any, say for instance, we don't have an opportunity to use some carrot or mushroom, they could take that and use it in kitchens and share that with missions throughout the city. So that's great. And then ultimately, we do still provide food to farmers for putting back into the land, which we hear is important as well. And then we've got a partnership with Seacliff Energy. So a tough thing for us to get to our recycling, which we wanted to get 95% recycling rate, was separating the food from the can. So now with partnerships with Seacliff, they were able to, and there's other ones, CC Bioenergy and all that have the opportunity to do it as well. We can separate that food. They can then turn that into biogas through anaerobic digestion, and they're powering greenhouses at Seacliff. It's actually the largest concentration of greenhouses in North America, and then they're recycling that metal. So there's so many great things, and when we're all working together, we can really uncover those opportunities. So really excited to be on this panel, be a part of this, and figure out where we can go from here. With
Thank
that,
you, John.
I pass it over to Doug.
Thank you. Good presentation. Is there anyone in the room other than PMP Optica who builds optical sorters and you actually don't? Anybody? Good, because it can sound like we're picking on people that build optical sorters. So I'm Doug Alexander, Director of Engineering with Ippolito Fruit and Produce. I'm really an open, collaborative, partner-seeking person. That's why I'm involved in a lot of industry associations and why I get to know a lot of people, because at the end of the day, that's where you find your solutions, and that's where really thematically I'm going to go. When I joined Ippolito Fruit and Produce, I was doing a lot of other things, and the company decided to let me continue to do those things because it helped out bringing other perspectives. And quick show of hands, how many of you are here today? Great. Okay, thanks. So John and I have had the plans to keep our presentations incredibly short. I'm going to bang through these slides quickly so that you can ask questions. This is about you and your challenges and your problems, asking us how we solved ours. I'm going to talk about a cool little project we did, but in the end, it's up to you. So, and those of you that know me, I will call you out. So Gary, if you don't have a question, I'll have one for you. I'll ask you. Or Carlos, ask you about how much, never mind. Anyway, so Ippolito Fruit and Produce. It's a family-run company, 4th generation's in the company. It's Canadian. They live not too far from where the businesses are in Burlington. We have 3 facilities in town, as well as one at the Toronto Food Terminal. We also have one in Salinas, California. We're growers, so we grow on about 15 to 20,000 acres in the Southwest. We contract when there is no snow in Ontario, so we grow locally when it's possible, as well as we have a number of other operations related to transportation and a few other high-tech businesses that we're in. So some of the things we've done sustainably, we reduced our packaging. We've gone to a resealable package, get away from the hard-top clamshell package, cut our packaging by about 1/3. We thought that was really cool. Then I took a walk through the plant when I first joined it, And really my role is operational business transformation. I took a look at this and I said, oh my dear Lord, you know, how do you tolerate this? How do you come to work every day and look at that? Cher walked through my plant one day and it was knee deep in spinach in one location. How do people not come to work and not lose their minds? I didn't swear then. Not lose their minds over seeing this kind of waste. And these pictures really don't do justice. The culture was the problem. So I set up KPIs to measure and understand where the opportunities were. I really wasn't looking to make the world better and reduce food waste and feel good about things. I really cared about the money. At the end of the day, we needed to increase our capacity to meet our customer demands. We needed to reduce our cost of goods sold, and it was in the waste. It just feels good that we're reducing food waste, but if you notice, the theme around what Cher and John talked about is money and dollars and cents. So culturally, Canadians, we're not really conscious of how much food waste there is. This Maclean's article was about 2 years ago. My date is a little bit old. I talk about this maybe too much. At the end of the day, consumers are the big target, the big opportunity. Manufacturers, we can do our part at 20% of the food waste. We'll go back one slide. 31 billion in Canada. My number's a little off. I think that's just consumer waste at 100 billion. Worldwide, does anyone know how much food we eat as humans on Earth? Anybody? Deb, do you remember? 3 billion tons, 3 billion tons of product, 3 billion tons of food, but we waste 1.3 billion tons. So about 40%. So if the population of the planet goes from 7 to 9 billion humans, that's not 40%. So one solution to the shortage of food is reduce the stuff we throw out. The bottom, so we don't really have a food waste problem, we have a culture problem. It's not okay to dispose of $2 trillion worth of food. At the bottom, you see the picture of the spinach leaf. It's not really that great. That's our target to get rid of. But at the end, the guy on the left-hand side, the other side of it, is what we really end up getting rid of, his whole family. So we target using an optical sorter. It's 1980s technology that's been advanced year after year after year. It's been made smaller. They improve the processing power to make quicker decisions on a smaller footprint. And what that ends up doing is making industrial scale food waste. So I watched this thing operate, and at the end of the day, it's meant to grade product that you see in the bottom there and identify the off-spec material and sort it out nicely and identify the foreign material. Those are real foreign material that our humans caught. And that's a ruler in the middle that gives you an idea of the scale that this thing is incapable of identifying. And one of the challenges is at 3,300 pounds an hour, at 3 meters a second through this machine, one leaf weighs about a gram. That's 419 leaves per second. It's just not able to do it. But I'm a good collaborator and I'm patient with folks, so I started calling where the manufacturers are of this equipment. Unfortunately, it's in different time zones with different languages because we do not have a good food equipment industry in Canada. It's very small in proportion to the industry. So it is a real shortcoming for us and a personal bugaboo of mine. So rather than waste my time continuing the discussion with the manufacturers who were unwilling to try, there was a lot of can't and won't. We tried that, it doesn't work, and I went to other manufacturers and I said, you know, there's another approach to this. Maybe we can reduce the waste. It's all your fault, was really mostly what we got back. So, like being a good collaborator, Luis Garcia over there from Conestoga College and I were talking, and I said, you will not believe what I'm seeing at Ippolito. And we talked about what the root cause was in one particular area. There were a lot of areas of waste that we're going to address, but one particular area is around optical sorting, the technology as inferior as it is. And we said, you know, I'm going to do a little speed dating. We're going to introduce you to somebody new, P&P Optica. They maybe have something in common that they may have a solution to. So we met and we started to talk about it. And I looked at what their technology can do. And essentially, it can see that same scope of spinach, in that case, Queen Victoria brand, and identifying it much more precise elements. So the ability to make a better decision. As opposed to 93% good going out in the waste, which is what it really is, we have the ability to make better decisions. So how do we make this work? How do we identify different things in there that either add value to our process or make a better decision to reduce food waste? Well, we're not really capable of doing this on our own. The technology that can identify chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B and identify the specific quantity in a leaf is a little more than what I usually am able to do on a day. Martin maybe, but you might be able to do that, but I can't. So I might end up asking you. So this technology, when we started to do the pilot work at P&P Optica, we put light density green plastic in amongst the spinach, which optical sorters couldn't tell. It looks the same. Even other foreign material detection devices can't do it. So from a food safety perspective, it's either going to let it through, and you might eat it, or it might reject a lot of its other members. This technology, as you can see, is capable of identifying it based on its chemical properties. It's not a camera system, it's a scientific instrument. And what makes P&P Optica unique? Well, one, they're Canadian, so same time zone, same language, and we're like a bar apart. So it's not too hard to have a collaborative relationship. It's actually fun. The instrument is able to see, as you can see, the hamburger patty. There's a piece of thin plastic that you couldn't catch with X-ray that would get through to a consumer. It can easily identify it. So how do we apply that same technology to a sorting system? Hyperspectral data is a lot of information, about 10 megabytes per second. The top left-hand corner where you see the three-dimensional image, that's the kind of information that you can get off of this. That tells you the chemistry, chemical properties of the element. The optical sorter can identify a toad. So I went out and I started talking to my friends. Cher and I were talking. I started to explain to her my issues. Not all of them, just the ones that were work-related. And she said, I want to help you. I want to work with you, because one element in this wasn't just the technology that we need to fix, but it was also the culture that just tolerated this. We needed a degree of intolerance, and around produce, it wasn't. So we put everybody together. Axiom is a Cambridge machine manufacturing company. I'm making them build a machine, one of the largest in Ontario. We brought in Conestoga College and the Institute of Food Processing Technology, planning to use the facility as a pilot facility because they have a nice little food plant within the school. University of Guelph provided a post-harvest biochemist. We don't have a post-harvest biochemist on staff. EarthFresh is one of our partners in produce sales. Amazing Grains makes nutraceuticals, so there's an opportunity to turn the spinach into a smoothie base or a health food. Riga Farms is a grower who has issues with carrots. So together we're working to try and make this thing work. We were very fortunate in March to put the first one in after several pilot works. We started the project about 8 months ago, actually in the lab at P&P, and we have a large-scale, fairly expensive hyperspectral imaging system. In the line, in my new plant, imaging, and we started to gather data. Well, okay, now we built one, and it's in place, and what's it able to do? Well, the one remarkable thing that we identified was we planned to identify shelf life. If we can better predict the shelf life, we can reduce food waste by properly putting the code on it, so that you're not either disposing of it unknowingly, or it's not rotting in your fridge. Those markers on the bottom right indicate the location in the field. So we can not only, by batch, it's the location in acreage. So we might grow on 15 or 20,000 acres, but we can identify, based on the chemical properties of it, where it came from. So as we build a database and a calibration curve, we're going to have great intel and a great management tool to help us make better decisions. As well, predicting the shelf life, we're very confident that we'll be able to accurately predict the shelf life and reducing it. Not only is this technology capable of making better decisions to sort and identify the toad or the ruler or the chunk of wood and actually do that process properly, it's capable of doing much, much more. And so building that technology at home and building it collaboratively is really what we've done to try and solve one of many problems that we have as far as waste. The sustainability management tool that we use, the SMS, and the food loss and waste tool we find are excellent. We've taken our hand metrics and adapted them very smoothly to the system that Provision provided. And we've identified lots of projects that I'm happy to share with you that are either world-leading and innovative or very simple and day-to-day. And so that's the approach. Put your hand up, ask for help, and it'll come. You just got to keep doing that until you find a solution. Don't give up and don't become complacent and accept that as the way it is.
Thank you, everyone.
Good.